Hey guys, I might be streaming. It's quite possible that I might be streaming. Let's take a slow drink. It looks like I'm streaming. Mmm, delightful. That's Dr. Pepper with my very own cherry concoction that I've added. Um, I'm going to try sharing this to the freaking Twitters if I'm smart enough. Highly unlikely that I am. It's even funnier when I see the thumbnail that I have for it was for Patriot Month of July last year, and I've just kept it. I need to change it. It's an AI picture of me being super ripped, which uh, is not accurate. I'm not small. I'm very big, but I'm not jacked. So let's post this. Okay. Cool, cool, cool. Let's do this. Um, so just to start out, and let's turn that off. I don't know why that's on. I have been studying Genesis for the past. Well, okay, I've been studying different parts of Genesis for the past week because that's what's in Come Follow Me. So I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter Day Saints, and we have a study pattern that we go through, starting with um, the beginning of different books of Scripture. So we're on the Old Testament this year, and so that means at the beginning of the year we'll start in the beginning of the Old Testament, and by the end of the year we'll have finished it, and then we'll go on to the next book of Scripture, and it kind of rotates through the books of Scripture so that we have something cyclical, but something that we can focus on. And I'm giving way too much background information, but I want to kind of express why I'm feeling the way I am. So I've been studying Genesis. I think we're on 25 through 33 right now, and I've been loving it. In my mind, I see the temple everywhere, and that's a partly a me problem, but also that's it's there. It's there. I'm just going to be really obvious. It's there, and not just proto temple, and so then I got to discussions about what we studied, and it wasn't brought up as much. And don't get me wrong, like I very much understand that there's a reason to focus on how what we read in the scriptures can be applicable to us and how it can change our behavior and our interactions with other people and with God through what we can get from it, instead of just being like, oh, here is the architecture of what's happening. This is the architecture, the layout of the story. So um, I'm not trying to focus overly on the architecture of the story, but I also want to really emphasize that there's a lot that adds to the the discussion. Basically, I feel like sometimes we're missing way too much, and this will really clarify a lot of things. So I want to go over it, and that's why before doing anything else, after getting out of church today, this is what we're doing. We're talking about Genesis. So let's do this. To start out with, I wanted to discuss how uh, the scriptures. This is before we do any discussion. This is a discussion that's necessary. So I want to discuss how we perceive the scriptures. Okay, let's see if I have a capture of something that like I can share. Do, 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 do. Let's not do that. Let's just do a fresh one. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, very cool, very cool. Oh, I thought that I had it. I don't think I have it. Somehow I have it and I don't have it. Hmm. Let's get rid of that one and try again. Yeah. Man, this is the kind of stuff that I'm glad that people don't do on the fly. It would be infuriating. Yeah, I hit the wrong buttons is how it is. But now we're here. Okay. Um, so what's going on here is we have the actual story behind it, and I'm gonna label it two things. I'm gonna label it truth and actual story. But that second one doesn't mean anything. Like, what's an actual story? An actual story is someone recounting it as it occurred to them. That's not an actual story. Like, that's not truth, because that just means that it's their truth in their mind. We all know people that can lie or that can deceive. So anyway, the actual story follows a pattern and it follows a path, and eventually it like leads to somewhere. Starts somewhere, leads somewhere, but it is not always super clear, but we're going to say it's mostly the truth. We're going to put it in a platonic ideal of a story. This is the truth. This is how something was described, but how it actually occurred. So we have the Old Testament, and we have all these things that occurred in the Old Testament that we think that actually occurred. We have people, we have interactions, we even have things that they said. And yet this is from thousands and thousands of years ago. So the question is, how accurate is it? And now we'll get to the second layer. We have the next layer, which is someone telling the story. And this is just someone who's trying to recreate this story. They're trying to tell this story as best as they can. They're not interested in like lying. They're doing their best to retell it. They're trying to give like an accurate rendition of the story, and they're just different people, and they weren't there. And so you can see that it's kind of different. No matter who you are, if you're just someone telling the story, you're going to be missing things. You're going to be telling it from a certain point of view. And most importantly, someone with an agenda. This is what we normally run into. You normally run into someone who's like, I'm telling the story, but I'm trying to portray something particular. The last discussion we had was about Adam and Eve. Well, this was a while ago, but it was about Adam and Eve, and it was about how the Garden of Eden story might actually have been this. It might have been someone with an agenda telling the story. They weren't trying to actually convey as many truths about the story as they could. They were couching it in truths, maybe, but they were purposely framing it in certain ways. They were purposely saying like, hey, here's this, and here's this, and here's this. And they were doing it because they were trying to create a narrative. Like, this narrative feels a lot different than this narrative. The someone with an agenda narrative feels a lot different than the actual truth agenda. And I feel like that's normally what we get. But then you have to realize that sometimes there's layers, meaning sometimes someone with an agenda, you can have two people with agendas in a row telling the same story, or we get a rendition of an earlier version of a story, which was someone with an agenda story told by someone else with an agenda. And this person, once again, I don't know what I did there. I somehow deleted it. Let's try again. Once again, this person, we're going to say that they're trying to do their best to tell the story. They want to focus on this and on this. And so this person probably actually knows more about the actual true story or some other versions of the story, because they're referencing, if you notice, they're referencing different sections. If we take little bites out of it, shrink. Oh, that was horrible. Ooh, I could do lines. I know how to do lines. So let's start here. Man, I can do lines, but am I good at it? No. And let's even say that they actually completely hit this part. Why does it keep reverting to that? So if you notice, like, imagine that this whole long thing is the story from the truth or the actual story. You'll see that there's sections that someone telling the story, they got mostly the whole story. They just kind of emphasized certain things more, and they told it in their own voice. Someone with an agenda, they left out things completely on top of emphasizing certain things more and telling it with their own voice. Someone else with an agenda, they might have only been picking things originally from the person who was someone with an agenda telling the story, or maybe they're getting it from the actual original story, but they have even less, or they have more, or they have added things. And this is what we see all throughout the Bible. That was a really long way to say this is what we're seeing. And on top of that, some of the people who were adding and changing things in the Bible, they had I'm going to say different views than the story purported. The story was telling something, but the people who had the agenda that were actually writing the story down and telling it later, they did not want that version of the story to be told, so they told their own version of the story, or they purposefully told the story with things that were missing that made the story appear different, or maybe they even changed things. And we're going to hit examples of this in our discussion today. So that's how I'm going to begin. And I studied sociology in college, and I think that really changes how I view the world, because I have a strong understanding that every single person that's interacting has a perspective, and they have an understanding of the world. So like when I interact with someone, their perspective makes it harder on not harder or easier, but it makes it so that they see the world and its events differently. And when they recount it, they're recounting it in their own voice. And so then when I hear them recount it, I'm not hearing an accurate rendition of what happened. I'm hearing this story being told in their voice. Even if it is incredibly accurate, there's still some, like, you cannot help it just by telling it in your voice. Like if I were to tell a story, and then just to give an obvious example, my sister were to tell a story, even if it's the same exact story, we literally do not deviate from the words. The intonation will be different. The even if it's just the male to female voice, that will change things. But in all accuracy, like we're not going to be 100% identical in every other way, in phrasing, in word choice, in anything. And so someone that gets both versions of the story might get a more accurate understanding of what actually happened. But in the Bible and in other instances like this, we do not have 13 different versions of the story all the time. All the time. What we generally get is we get one version of the story, then someone else referencing that version, or someone else referencing a different version, and it makes you realize that maybe the version that we have wasn't the actual original version. It was someone else's recounting of the story. So the original version that's being referenced is different than their recounting. It's a long way to get to the temple, which is where I'm trying to go. So next section, let's focus on the temple. So when I'm talking about the temple in the Bible, I am talking about certain things that maybe you don't identify with the temple. And so let's go over what some of those things are. There is a sacred place, and we're going to get into different versions of that sacred place. There is a theophany, a divine experience, appearance, and everything. There's a covenant oath. There's often a name change. And and here's the other thing I'm going to say. I guess I should finish. There's a name change. There's a sacred meal. There's water. There's usually a tree. And there's a blessing. Clothing change. I don't know if I hit all of it. There's more. But the whole point is that these are the things which occurred in probably every interaction. On the other hand, the stories that are told about them don't always have every single one of those elements of the temple. If you're a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, this might make more sense if I say things like, if I were to tell about my temple experience and I was to say, hey, last time I went to the temple, and then I tell a story about like how when I went through the front door, something happened, and then I say I went through the front door, they checked my recommend, and then let me tell you, I just had an absolutely great time, and I feel like I learned so much, and I came a lot closer to God. You'll understand that I'm only actually telling one tiny bit of the temple experience, and then I'm kind of giving an overall feeling of it afterwards. That's kind of what's happening throughout a lot of the Bible, is that they'll be telling little bits and sections of the temple experience, or of their temple experience, but they're not saying everything, and the people who are counting it aren't saying everything, and there's a lot of reasons for this. One might just be when they're telling their story, that's what they choose to include, and another might be that the people who are recounting those versions, those renditions of the story, are choosing to include even less or more, or to interweave it with other stories or whatever. All in all, it makes for an accurate understanding of the actuality of what happened a little more difficult. So in some instances, you might see the sacred marker, the sacred place marked, and that's the only thing. Other instances, you might hear about a sacred meal and a covenant, and that's the only thing. In other instances, you might hear about a covenant, but you might not realize it's sacred because it just might seem like an agreement between people. And this is what is happening all over, is there's stories, but they're being told in such ways that we might not be seeing the overall picture. So I would like to get into some examples of this and talk about how we're missing some of these things. And so one example that I'm going to get into, oh man, and there's so much more, actually. If you've read any of Dave Butler's books, you understand that there's words also that are key indicators, because they're telling you more about the covenants and about the what's actually happening in the temple without actually saying it. So, for example, um, Dave Butler mentions shalom, or a word meaning perfection, a lot, and about how people are probably in the biblical temple at some point declared shalom. They're declared a higher level where they're declared whole or perfect. So let's go to um, Genesis 25:27, and let's see if I don't know if I'm in the way. Yeah, let's add. I'm gonna have to go through each one bit by bit. Oh, how did it disappear? Oh, that's funny. I got it now. Okay. Um, Genesis 25:27. So yeah, I don't know what I did. Let's see if I can get myself back easy, or if I just need to. Yeah, I can get myself back. Look at that. I'm so good at it. Okay. 25:27. And the boys grew, and Esau was a cunning hunter. So this is talking about Abraham marries, has descendants. Rebecca conceives. Who does she conceive? She conceives Jacob and Esau, and this is about how Jacob and Esau grew up. So Esau being born, Jacob being born, and then this is their whole youth, right? With a little more information. Oh, and there's so much. I want to go into so much. Um, so the boys grew. Esau was a cunning hunter. And what type of hunter was he? He was a man of the field. On the other hand, Jacob was a plain man, dwelling in tents. Now, if you're a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, there is a particular affinity towards the word tent. And I will agree to that. I don't think that in this instance it exactly means, and Jacob dwelt in a temple. He always went to a temple. But it at least invokes that imagery. I think it's supposed to invoke that imagery, but also it's supposed to contrast the fact that Esau was a man of the field. So there's an obvious contrast. So I'm going to take a quick dirt road when we're talking about Esau, him being a cunning hunter and a man of the field. And if you look at the Book of Mormon, the Book of Mormon is constantly talking about how the Lamanites were bloodthirsty people and how they hunted game for food. And I think that this is an example of that same argument that was playing out in the Book of Mormon. So in Genesis 25:27, Esau being a cunning hunter and Jacob being a plain man, I think that this is the Hebrews, the Israelites, saying, we think that to be civilized, you're not supposed to be a bloodthirsty man. You're not supposed to be a hunter. And so I think it's the same argument from Cain and Abel and Jacob and Esau. I think it's the same argument playing itself out. And we don't need to dive into that super deep, but it's really interesting that even in the Book of Mormon, that argument is played out where the civilized people, the Nephites, were in direct contrast to the uncivilized people, the Lamanites. And what did the Lamanites do? They hunted for their game, and they were bloodthirsty. And bloodthirsty probably wasn't just a metaphorical description of war. It was probably how they ate their food. And how did Esau make his food? He made delicious, savory venison. Don't know what that means, but anyway. So going back to 27, I want to talk about the word plain right here. So the Hebrew word plain is tam, T-A-M. And so when they say Jacob was a plain man, they're saying he was a tam man, which also means whole or completeness or perfection. It's kind of like the same word that's used talking about sacrificial animals, meaning when you say like without blemish, like that animal can't that were sacrificed can't be without blemish. So the argument can be that you're being trying to frame Jacob as a certain type of man. Who is he framed as? Someone who's fit for sacred service. The fact that right after they talk about tents is obvious that like there's multiple connections to sacredness all in one. Boom, boom, boom. And then the fact that it's contrasting Esau, who was a cunning hunter. Cunning is an interesting word. I don't think I have the Hebrew up yet. And the man of the field, but he was a skilled hunter, is what they say. And there's a lot of extra biblical literature about this, an extra biblical narrative that talks about how Esau was a skilled hunter, and he interacts with I think it was as the Apocrypha of Jasher. Anyway, and how Nimrod, who was also a skilled hunter, was able to get close to the animals. So this is Nimrod. Nimrod was able to get close to the animals that he hunted because of certain clothing that he wore. And then there's a theory that Esau took that clothing, killed Nimrod, took that clothing, and then in this next chapter, when after Esau comes and like he's getting chased by Nimrod's men, is the argument that he says to Jacob, "Sell me, or hide me, protect me," and Jacob gets his pottage. And there's a name change as well there, which is really interesting. But Jacob, after he's hidden and protected, he sells Jacob his birthright, because he's like, what am I going to die? What does it matter if I have this clothing and this birthright and everything? And then in the next chapter, when let's see. It's when, why is it so hard to do sometimes? Okay. So when Isaac was old and he's trying to give his blessing birthright to Esau, and Rebecca works with Jacob, she gets that savory meat going, and also she puts on some like goat, I can't remember, some goat fur, the goat skins, to make him seem a little hairier. But then also she takes goodly raiment that was Esau's. What is goodly raiment? That's temple clothing, in case you're wondering. But it might also have been what Nimrod was wearing to make him a good hunter, and put it on Jacob. So Jacob was dressed in goodly raiment. And one of the interesting things about this is that the smell of the raiment was supposed to be reminiscent of the Garden of Eden. That's part of the story. And what does Isaac say to Jacob? Let's see, right here. He came near him and kissed him, and he smelled the smell of his raiment, because that goodly raiment had a very particular odor. Which type of odor? It's as the smell of a field which the Lord hath blessed. Yeah. Just like paradise, just like the Garden of Eden. And I'm getting way off track, but the whole point, I went down a dirt road. The whole point was that all of this stuff that we're missing, I don't know why I did that, Genesis 20:25, all the stuff that we're missing here is setting Jacob up as to be a holy man. So anyway, let's go on to one of the examples of we're going to go into one of the examples of temple. Now that I've taken us completely off the path. That's why I need someone else here, because they would have either taken us off the path further or gotten us a little closer. But like I was saying, the whole point is that there's so many temple imagery things going on here, and we just kind of miss it because we don't actually understand what the words mean. So this is an example that I find really important, and I'm gonna once again, like, I've given you guys the outline of like what some of the temple things are, and so you kind of just need to look at what those temple things are and see where they are. And the one things that I'm going to mention are actually deeper temple things that are indicators that they're temple, but maybe not one of those like temple. Um, temple like well like the 8 temple indicators I gave that there are other temple indicators. So in this story what happens is Isaac calls Jacob, blesses him, says don't take wife of the daughters of Canaan, go somewhere else, and just make sure you promise me. And so he Jacob Esau sees that Isaac has blessed them, um, and Jacob obeys his father. Esau goes to Ishmael, gets some wives, or gets a, yeah, and Jacob went out from Beersheba and went towards Haran. So Beersheba is an incredibly important word. It means well of the seven or well of the oath. So first of all, it's one of those temple indicators that I mentioned with water. But secondly, you know it's a temple indicator on other instances because of the word Sheba. Sheba means seven or oath. It means completed. It means whole. It means that it's a well where a covenant was made that that completes things. It's basically saying there's temple that happened. And then the fact that he went towards Haran is interesting. But Beersheba is a really important word. And let me give. I can't promise this is the reason, but in my mind, Shiva, which is the word covenant as well. So 7 and covenant are related because 7 is completeness. When God made the world, it took 7 days. Excuse me, and Shiva is a reminder of that. So the 7 days is the completeness of the covenant that God made when He made the world. So Jacob goes there. He lays there all night. And he has what they calls a dream, but then he beholds a ladder in the dream, and it's funny because I don't think he dreamed, but anyway, he beholds a ladder, and it's set up on earth and it reaches the top of heaven. So what does this quote unquote ladder do? Is it connects earth to heaven, one side on earth, the other side to heaven. Well, the word ladder is not what the Hebrew says. The word ladder is not accurate. What it is it's a temple ramp, and you could convey this a million different ways. Let's see. Sorry, I'd like done research on like 8 different things, so I'm kind of like a little disorganized. But so in my mind, if you talk about ancient history, ancient traditions, ancient religion, and they talk about what connects the heaven and the earth, is what connects it is what connects a baby to his mother, and it's in the navel. And so a lot of times you can call those mounds, you can call them axis mundi, you can call them primordial mounds, you can call them temples. Jacob calls it a ladder because there's nutrition, there's information moving back and forth from the mother to the child in this ladder, and it's all the same. It's all the same. There's a vertical cosmic axis, as you would say. And that, of course, is what a temple is. So anyway, so Jacob sees that in the dream, and there's angels of God ascending and descending on it. And angels generally means messengers. And I see it as temple workers, like 90% of the time, maybe even more. So there's temple workers who are ascending and descending this axis mundi. And God is at the end of it, just like in the temple. God is the destination. And at some point in this, because this, remember, is a shorthand form of what's saying, like, I don't think that Jacob wrote down exactly what he saw right after, and even if he did, that would be a shorthand for what he actually experienced. But some point, he talks to God, and God starts talking to him about promises, covenants that he's made, where he says, look at this land, I'm going to give it to you and your seed. So there's covenants that are not only talking about land, but about seed, about progeny. And he keeps talking about the progeny. And he says, behold, I am with thee, and I will keep thee in all places whither thou goest, and will bring thee again into this land, for I will not leave thee until I have done that which I have spoken to thee of. Fantastic promise. Oh man, there's so much going on. So there, at one point, I'm trying to figure out where he says it. He says ha makom. So we're gonna go to verse 28:19. He keeps going. He starts dedicating there. So once again, these are all indicators of the temple that I was going over. But he calls the name of the place Bethel, house of God. But the name originally was Luz. So what does Luz mean? Like, what do these words mean? Well, Luz. Well, actually, let's go the part where he says, "And he called the name." This phrase right here, and he called the name of the place Bethel. Called the name is what kara, and the place is ha makom, and that literally means the place. But it eventually became one of the most sacred and important terms in Judaism, where like you could even use it as a name for God instead of saying God's name, which you couldn't do in Judaism, because this is the place where heaven and earth met. Like I said, it's the navel, and so when people saw that, they can just reference the whole thing by saying the place. And then we're going about Luz earlier. I was mentioning Luz. So the word Luz can mean almond tree, almond nut, or twisted/curved wood. So there's some obvious symbolism where almond trees are the first to bloom in Israel. Jeremiah sees an almond tree. The menorah is almond shaped. Sorry, I'm trying to recall a bunch of things. The rod of Moses's brother, of Aaron, I think that was an almond rod. There's a lot of stuff going on. Garden of Eden, almond, all this stuff is going on. The fact that it was called that is very evocative of different instances of temple. If you say Luz, if you say almond tree, you're not just saying it. It's evocative of all those different instances of holy temple scenarios. Then this next verse 20, if God will be with me. This is a vow, so it's a covenant. If God will be with me and will keep me in the way that I go and will give me bread to eat and raiment to put on. Well, holy cow, if God will be with me, that is a huge thing. This is the covenant saying, and the word if is tricky, but God will be with me is a covenant, and then will keep me. Keep is the word that's talked about Adam and Eve earlier when their command is given to Adam about how to protect the guard and protect the land, Shamar and Abed. And I can't remember which one's Shamar and which one's Abed, but and I'm looking through my stuff right now to find it, but I cannot. But that's the same word. It's one of the same words. Gosh dang it, I wish I knew if I could find if it was Shamar and Abed. It should be, yeah, I don't have it. I do have it written down, but it's too much. Let me see. Oh, and by the way, so if God will be with me, what I was trying to say is that it's not a conditional question, it's a promise, and it's referencing Genesis 28:15, where God says, I am with thee and will keep thee in all places whither thou goest. So this is echoing back. But so the keep me in this way that I was just saying, um, keep me in this way, that is shamar. So I have it written down, which is guard, watch, preserve, or keep the covenant. So that's really important. And then when he says the way, that is Derek. And Derek is the road, the path, or the journey, the way of life. It's the covenant path. It's what's talking all throughout there. So then afterward, there's the bread to eat. And what is the bread to eat? Where's my brain going? It's the it is the what's it called when you have a huge meal? Come on, brain. Anyway, it's the meal at the temple. So you have covenants. You have God saying He'll be with me, which is echoing a covenant earlier, and it's a promise. And then you have the dedication to be a priest to the temple by shamaring, and that you will have that meal that's always at the temple, and the raiment you put on, which is holy raiment, which is temple always has holy raiment as well. And then they talk about kind of a few other things: Father's house, God's house, peace. This is actually, I actually would mark this verse as well, verse 21, so that I come again to my Father's house in peace, then shall the Lord be my God. Because I wanted to kind of talk about that, which goes back to what I mentioned earlier about Shalom. And let me see if there's another reference to it, because I think in 33:18 they also talk about that same thing. So it says, that doesn't seem right. That's 34. That's why I went too quickly. And Jacob went to Shalom, a city of Shechem, which is the land of Canaan, when he came from Paddan Aram and pitched his tent before the city. So they both mention the word peace. Let's see. So the word shalom can mean whole, complete, intact, peaceful, and it's the same root as shalom. So it's all together, and it's all, as I said earlier, probably a temple promise given to them. So the fact that it's mentioned right after, when he said, after he finished, let me see if I can find it again, because of course I dodged around when I shouldn't have. Yeah, so in 28, 21, he says, so that I come again to my Father's house in peace, then shall the Lord be my God. So all of that is referencing the promises that he made, that he is now Shalom, that he has now been given that promise. So, oh my gosh, this was the most obvious one, and I should have started on the least obvious one, and I didn't do a very good job with this one, so I'm sorry. But it's absolute mind-boggling if you can just break this apart and be like, what is he referencing? And the answer is he's referencing the temple. Every single step, it's the temple, it's the temple, it's the temple. Okay, I am tired. I'm doing a poor job, so I'm going to jump off. If I had someone else to interact with, I'd probably do a better job. But I do want to, once again, real quick, mention this just so that people we wrap back around and remember that the scriptures are actually probably a combination of multiple people with agendas telling something instead of us getting someone telling a full and complete story. And I think that's really important. So that's not the only thing I'd like to say, but I would like that to be very clear, because I feel like that's something that we miss out on. So anyway, I'm going to end it. I'm sorry. It's mostly just my brain. I should have drank way more caffeine if I was going to try doing this by myself, talking 40 minutes or something without interruption. I really like interacting with people much more than I just like rambling on. So anyway, Thank you guys, and I'll do better next time. But